Okay, listen up. As I mentioned to you, I've already posted the assignment for the next chapter. And I've already posted the assignment for the next chapter, and it's going to go fast. We're going to have a test on that next chapter a week from today. The reason we're going to have a test on that chapter is a week from today is because, one, it's an easy chapter, and two, in 2 weeks, which is the 17th, we have the semester final exam. Now, those of you who are on a trimester, this will just count as a really big test. Okay, so those of you who are on semesters, whether it's Plymouth or whether it's a remote school, this will be whatever your school's percentage. I think Plymouth, it counts as, I don't know, I've lost track. 1/3, 20% to 1/3 of your grade, your overall grade for the course. Okay, so it's important. The test will cover chapters 1 through 6 of this book and pages 1 to 89 of the Covey book. Okay, so a couple things. When I look at grades on tests and when I gauge a class's knowledge of the material that I'm presenting, I always question whether or not I'm moving too fast, I'm not teaching the right stuff, whatever. And one indicator of whether I'm moving too fast is if consistently the class is struggling with the material, then that means I'm not doing a very good job of teaching it. However, if I'm going through the material and a few people get 100% or 90% on a test, and then I've got other people who are doing 30 and 40%, and they haven't asked me any questions about the material, whether offline or in class, or if I ask a question that on something that we've already covered, or I've asked a question about something that's in the reading material, and no one knows the answer except for a few people, then I'm guessing those people have done what they were supposed to do and the rest have not. Okay? So as I look at the test scores on this last chapter, I had a couple of very good grades. I had a lot of, or I'm sorry, not a lot, I had a few okay grades, and then I had a lot of bad grades. And bad, I would say, close that door. Bad, I would say, a D or lower. Okay? Now, I can tell you 2 of the questions on this last test, and Austin's going to get a little bit of a heads up here, but I've already told everybody in the class a number of times to pay attention to the tests. 2 of the questions on the test were because there were multiple answers possible, or in other words, it was like check boxes and you're supposed to select 1 or more answers that were correct. One of those questions, intentionally, one of those questions I specifically said, which 2 of the following, and many of you only selected 1 of the following. The other one, I was check boxes, and there were 2 possible answers, and I'm sorry, there were 4 possible answers, 2 of them were correct, and most of you selected only 1 of them. Okay, so you've got to pay attention. Take the time to read the question and do what you can. There's plenty of time. As I've told you many times, take as much time as you need on the test. I'm not in any hurry to get this done. Now, when I say I'm not in any hurry, this class is the farthest we've been behind in 14 years of teaching material like this. I've always been able to get through this first book within the first half of the year, before Christmas break. We're not going to do that this year. I think it's for a couple reasons. One, I think it's too big of a class. Honestly, 36 students is too big of a class. And the in-class, you students, by and large, are performing, the majority of you, or many of you, not majority, are performing at the same level as most of the remote students over the years. Why? Because it's difficult with as many students as this is to single you out and work with you and motivate you. And remote students, like, you know, it's, hey, you don't want to do the work. I don't know you. I don't see you. So it's difficult for me to motivate you to do it. Most of my classes are 16, 18 students over the last 14 or 15 years, however long I've been teaching this. And so I've been able to corner the students and basically berate them to the point where they're willing to learn the material. But with a class this big, it's difficult to single students out, to try to motivate them, and two, it's easier for you, whether you recognize this consciously or not, it is perceived as being easy for you to hide. Okay, you're just one more student in a class of class of 36. And so it's not as obvious when you don't show up for class. It's not as obvious when you don't know the answers. Those kinds of things. And that one's on you. That simply tells me that you're not taking personal responsibility for your own education. Whether you plan to make this a career or not, bottom line is it's, depending on the school, 2 to 3 credit hours of your grade. 2 classes, or 3 classes in some cases. There's absolutely no excuse for it, honestly. I mean, it's frustrating to me, but that's not the most important thing. It's disappointing, and you're doing yourselves a disservice by not just making the effort. And that's all it is, it's effort. It is absolutely not the difficulty of the material. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. It's not the difficulty of the material, it's direct. I refuse to believe, honestly, I refuse to believe that it's a difficulty of material, because there are some students who are not. I mean, there are a couple of you in here who do this, are into it, and are doing stuff on the outside with the computers and stuff like that. You're doing well. Okay, but I've got other students who are doing really well in here that aren't a bunch of geeks like me. Okay, we've got a couple geeks in this class like me. I mean that in the kindest possible term. But then I've got other students in here who are not, but are still doing well. So that tells me that the material is getting across. The material is there, it's available. I provided it. I've given you a proper level of guidance. The rest of you need to get your act together. Okay? Need to get your act together. I apologize that the class is that big, but what I don't apologize for is your inability or lack of willingness to work at it. Okay? We're doing these speeches seems like every single week, and there's no excuse for it. Okay? Does anyone disagree with what I'm saying? Honestly, I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get mad. My son will tell you that when I tell you I'm not going to get mad, I refuse to outwardly show it. Okay? I won't get mad. I won't embarrass you. Does anyone disagree with what I'm saying? Okay. If you don't feel comfortable talking to me about it in front of the rest of the class, you can see me after class. I'll make sure you get a pass, or I'll make sure your home school gets the information. If you're having trouble learning the material, I don't know it. Okay? You have to let me know. If I'm moving too fast or you're just not getting it, you have to let me know. That's what the exit surveys are for. And then when you do them, the exit surveys that I see are, nope, the last column, nope, 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 don't need anything, don't need any additional information. However, sometimes I miss them, at least on a timely basis. So if you do have something that you don't understand, you can't figure out, or you're frustrated with it, you can't get it, email me. I get over 100 emails a day, literally. Over 100 emails a day, and I go through them all. If I don't have time to go through them right away, I'll keep them highlighted, and then I'll go through them late at night or early in the morning. So please, email me if you don't get the material. And if you need help, I will help you to the best of my ability until the point where I feel I'm being taken advantage of. I saw a friend of mine who is now teaching, didn't take this class, but a friend of mine's daughter, who is also a friend of mine. She wrote on Facebook last night. It was classic. wrote on Facebook last night. She's a professor at a university someplace teaching chemistry. And she wrote on there, note, word to the wise. Don't show up for half the classes in the semester, fail to do all your work, forget to show up for the test, and then write the following in a note to me. And the note said, from the student, I completely spaced out the test. I was at a sporting event for the school. Get back with me ASAP and let me know when I can make up the test. I just thought that was the epitome of arrogance. And clearly she's not going to let that student make up the test. Okay, so if you have a history of not putting the effort in, then I'm not going to jump through hoops, I'm not going to go out of my way. But if you legitimately have a question, or if you legitimately have a struggle with this, then please let me know. Once again, and I've said this many times. Right? How many have heard me say this before? If you've got a problem, email me or call me. Really? That's okay. All right. I mean, I'm getting old and I forget stuff, as my son and soccer players tend to point out on a regular basis, and wife. But I'm pretty sure I mentioned this to you a lot. Okay, somebody keep track for Aaron, who has legitimate illnesses. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. 13? 12? Okay, whatever. All right, so would you hit the last row of lights up front, please, somebody? Hey, and try not to break it. All right, sounds good. And then, Johnny, would you turn on the projector, please? Okay, the slides. I will post, I forgot to post the slides.
Already up there.
Did I give them to you? Okay, all right, good. See, I told you. All right, hopefully this will stay up from the beginning and continue on. Okay, this is a fast and furious review, not review for you, but review of networking services. Okay, so these networking services that we're talking about, okay, you don't have to type all this down, just pay attention to what I'm saying. These networking services that we're going to address in this chapter are a combination of how networks work, which I've referred to you, or I've talked to you about DNS, I've talked to you about DHCP. We're going to get into a little bit more detail about each of those. But it's also talking about services that sit on a Windows server that allow a network to work. Okay? Next semester, when we get to the server book, we're really going to dig into these and show you how to make them work, which clearly will set you apart, whether you take the certification or not. If you learn the material that we're going to cover in the server administration, you will be light years, I'm not exaggerating, you will be light years ahead of most of the people taking small business, or functioning as small business administrators, at least at first. Okay? You will be light years ahead of that, which gives you an opportunity. Without the certification, you may not get that opportunity, but if you are thrust into that position, you will have the opportunity to use the material very quickly that we're going to be covering a little bit here, and also when we get to the server side. Okay, so working with networking services. Our objectives, we're going to understand how to set up common network services. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to know how to install it. We'll cover that in the server thing. We're going to define some other networking services we haven't talked about, and some name resolution techniques. I've talked to you about DNS. What does DNS do? Everybody should have their hands up. Christopher, what's DNS do?
That turns host names into IP addresses.
Outstanding. Resolves host names to IP addresses. Another way of saying that is when you type in www.hp.com, it changes that, or it resolves it. It translates it from the host name to an actual IP address that your computer can use. To an IP address that it can use. DNS in a Windows world and a Windows networking world is the most important network service that there is. Okay, DHCP, what's that do? Quick, Jason Shelley. Outstanding. It gives what? It gives out IP addresses. DHCP is a service that runs on how many kinds of different devices? Name one device, Jill, that DHCP runs on. The DHCP server service. Now I know for a fact that you know this because I've seen you answer it on tests, but whenever I ask you that question, you freeze up. You know? Austin.
Cell phones.
DHCP server. DHCP server.
Okay. No, we're talking about
That's actually that's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up. Give me one device that DHCP server runs on.
that'd be
A router. Okay, a router you buy for your house. Okay, DHCP server will run on that. Give me another one. Yes. An ISP. Well, that's kind of a broad category. An ISP is what? Okay. They've got something. Do they have a router that DHCP is running on? Probably, but they have other devices. What does the DHCP server service run on? Yes. It could run on a switch. That's not where I'm going, but you're right. What?
That's a smart switch to do that.
Could be a smart, yes, has to be a smart switch, a layer 3 switch. Come on, come on. What is the most common device that this service runs on? Austin? What kind of computer?
Personal computer?
Negative. Well, maybe, but
I mean, not practically, but it could.
this is a computer. What's a big computer? A server. Thank you. I'm trying to suck that out of you. Okay, a server. That's the most common place where the DHCP service runs. You set up the server, which is what we're going to do next semester. You set up the server. You install different services on that server. The DHCP server service is one of those. It's a role that you can put on a Windows 2012 server or a Windows 2008 R2 server. Okay. Now, what Austin brought up is a good point. DHCP can be both a server service and a client service. What do we mean by it being a client service, Colin?
It gives out.
No, client service.
No, it takes things.
It takes what? See, I'm not going to hit you if you don't get it. Man, I started walking over here and you started, and I know you know it. What?
It'd be like on a personal computer that's connecting to a server. It's that's like a two-way stream. It's the one that's bringing the information in. From
It's one that's receiving the information. A client in the networking world, in the computer world, a client is the workstation service or the DHCP client service or the DNS client service. It's the receiving end of whatever that service is. Okay, so a Windows phone or an Android phone or an iPhone, they function as a DHCP client because they go out and ask for an IP address from a DHCP server someplace. They broadcast out on the network saying, hey, I'm just turning on or I'm just connecting to your network, please give me an IP address. That means that they are a DHCP client. Now, here's the thing. If you go to each one of you, tell you what, let's do this. Hit the Windows, click on the Windows key, and I want you to type services, and then select what comes up. Result, no, not service, services. View local services. That's what you want. I don't think you click it. There you go. You should have a window that gives you a list of all of the services on your computer. Maybe not. There you go. Okay, as you scroll down through all of those, everybody get there?
Found it from DHCP.
Huh?
Found the DHCP.
DHCP client service. You should also find right below that DNS client service. You see those? DNS client, DHCP client, okay? And they should all be started. Those services are started. If you turn those services off and disable them and then reboot your computer, you won't get an IP address. If you disable the DNS client service and not just stop it, but actually make it so it doesn't start up when you start the computer back up, if you do that and it turns back on, you won't get an IP address. If you disable the DNS client and boot the computer back up, what's going to happen? How's that going to affect your computer? DNS client. Yes? You won't be able to get to any websites. Can you ping an IP address? Can you ping an IP address if DNS client is disabled?
Yes, you can.
I'm not looking at you. Huh?
No,
Why not?
because if you can't find the IP or the IP address to start with, how are you gonna be able to?
Okay, what if you ask me, just personally ask me, what's the IP address of www.microsoft.com? And I tell you it's 23.18.7.46.
Then you will be able to.
You will be able to. You can ping it. Now, can you ping it? Ping space www.microsoft.com? No. Okay, but if you ping
Straight up.
whatever I just said, 38.24.75.76, I know that's not what I said, but if you ping that and it's truly the IP address of that web server, you will get a response. The IP is not disabled, but the DNS client is disabled, which means it doesn't have the ability to go out and ask a DNS server, what is the IP address for this particular host? Okay. All right, so as we look at this slide, DHCP, short for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, automatically gives you out IP addresses, not just IP addresses and subnet masks. Zach, what's the purpose of the subnet mask?
Isn't it like, does it show like,
If I've got a subnet mask of 255.255.0.0 and an IP address of 172.16.3.4, what is the relevance, the importance, the purpose of the subnet mask when you compare it to the IP address?
bit rate or something like that? So
It tells you how many bits are used for what?
your IP address or?
Not IP address. Huh?
Network address?
Yes. The subnet mask tells you what part of the IP address is the network address and what part is the what? Every IP address has two components. One is a network address, one is a what, Frank? Come on, stay with me. What is it? Thank you, host address. So you've got a host address and you've got a network address. You know what? I'm going to start teaching like I coach. I will not accept anything less than excellence. Dora. Dora. Okay? Memorize this. Know this. Think about this. Be able to interpret this. Here's how it works. Okay? Here's how it works. It's broken down. It's just an acronym for how the whole DHCP, what do you want?
I was saying that.
I didn't ask you a question, so why are you raising your hand? Like I said, I'm going to teach like I coach. Now, knock them out. 10 good ones for the team. In your mind. Dora, discovery. What happens during the discovery process? It is a necessary but unfortunate event. Zach,
We do broadcast.
and says what?
Like, hey, need an IP address.
That's it. Like, hey, I need an IP address. And when it broadcasts to every device on the network, because that's how it works. And if it can't broadcast to every network, every device on the network, then it's not working properly. Why does it need to broadcast? Gosh darn it. Jason?
To select IP addresses that are in use.
It has to broadcast, kind of. Michael?
Because it has to make sure that that IP address is assigned is unique.
It has to make sure that that IP address is what?
Unique.
It's not going to determine that it's unique. Jessica?
It doesn't tell you what address on the network is that each.
It doesn't know the IP address of the DHCP server. It doesn't have an IP address, so it can't communicate at layer 3. It has to just broadcast out there and bellow and grunt and say, I am stupid, I need an intelligent IP address. And then, why doesn't it go directly to the DHCP server? Because it doesn't know where the DHCP server is. Okay, it doesn't know where it's at. It simply tells the network, I'm a dumb device, I need an IP address. And then what? That's the discovery process. And in fact, if you take a packet sniffer and connect to that network, when a client boots up, you will see, write this down, it's in your book, DHCP discover message from whatever its MAC address is. You will see DHCP discover, and that's a broadcast address. And what's cool is, based upon what you already know about IP addressing, is you will see the destination, maybe let's see, gold star for the day, if you can answer this question. So I've got a dumb client that has absolutely no idea what network it's on and what IP address it is. Every packet that's sent out on the network has a source address and a destination address, right? So when a dumb client boots up and does this discovery process and broadcasts and says, hey, give me an IP address, what do you think the destination address is for those packets when it's asking for an IP address? Anyone know? What's the destination address? We have three-hand Jill. Give me an example of an IP address that would be the destination. And if you think about what we've learned so far, no?
Destination where it's supposed to go, just everyone else on the network.
Yep. And what would that destination IP address if it's everyone else on the network? Nope. That's a very specific. That's a unicast address.
The APIP address?
Not the APIP address. It hasn't, no. Okay, actually Jason brought up a logical answer to that. Unfortunately, it's wrong. But the answer he brought up was, well, why not APIPA? It doesn't have an IP address. Because it doesn't assign itself an APIPA address, which we'll get to later, until after it's determined that there is no DHCP server out there, or it can't communicate with it. Austin.
Would be just the network address?
It doesn't know what the network address is yet. Tell me what that destination IP address is. Come on, you were there. What's the destination IP address? One more time. No? No gold star for you. Jason, you know. No, 127 would be its own. No one knows this? Think about it. What do we know about broadcasts? What IP address is used for broadcasts? We just covered this in 2 chapters ago. Yes.
Doesn't it have to be ending at 255?
It not only has, because it doesn't have its own IP address, it doesn't know what network it's on. It's not only ending in 255, it's beginning 255.255.255.255. Boom, it's out there. That's the destination. If you do, and remember this, if you do a sniff, use a packet sniffer of a broadcast during this, you're going to see the destination from that client. The source is going to be the MAC address because it doesn't have an IP address yet. The destination is going to be 255.255.255.255. It's broadcasting out on the wire or out on the wireless network. Okay, so it's now broadcast out. Every DHCP server that's on the network, whether it's a wireless access point, whether it's an intelligent switch, or whether it's a router, or whether it's a server with the DHCP server service on, is going to receive that, and they're all going to offer up an IP address. DHCP server sends out a unicast offering of an IP address to the client computer. So the source is whatever its IP address is. The destination is the MAC address of the device that's asking for it. It's going to send out that message, and so if Jessica is her computer is the DHCP client, it's going to receive a unicast message from Jason, who is a switch, from Jill, who is a router, and from Josh, who is a DHCP server. And it's going to say, hey, I got an IP address for you. It is, God bless you. This, okay? It is, here's your IP address. And so Jessica receives all these. The first one that she gets, unless it's just screwed up, the first one that she gets, she's then going to broadcast back out saying 255.255.255 dot, whatever it was. I think I got 4 of them in there. I would like to request, that's the third part, I would like to request this IP address from this server. Everybody gets that packet. So the other two, let's say it's sent back to Jill, the other two that gave her a DHCP address retract, take it back. They're authors. Why do they have to take those back? Why does this third part, think about the whole process, why does this third part have to be a broadcast? Why doesn't that client go directly to the device that it's accepting an IP address from? Taylor? All right, stand up. You're a DHCP client, stand up. You're a DHCP, stand up. You're a DHCP. You're a switch, a smart switch that's got DHCP. You are a router, and you are a server. Stand up. Okay, you stand over here. Everybody pay attention. Okay, he is off the network. Okay, and if you go into his configuration, right now, his machine is not turned on. Okay? When he turns around, I'm going to push the on button. When he turns around, all of the services on his computer are going to start, to include the DHCP client service. Boom, you're on. Okay, now, DHCP client service boots up. What are you going to say? Let's hear it. Do it loudly.
I need an IP address.
There you go. That's a broadcast. It's sent out. The destination of the packet is 255.255.255.255.255.255.255. Everybody sees it. Did you guys all hear him? All right? You're on a 172 network. You're on a 192 network. You're a 10 network. Okay? You're going to send a unicast message back to him, which means nobody else on the network hears it. And you're going to say, hey, I've got an IP address for you. So go send him a unicast message. Nobody else hears it. Hurry, hurry. This is a fast process. This gets, I heard that. Go, tell him. Go, tell him. Okay? All right, so he's got 3 unicast messages back to him. He's going to broadcast again. I accept. Who's he going to accept?
I accept Taylor's address.
Okay, he just broadcast. I accept Taylor's IP address. Now, there's a next step. Acknowledge that Taylor's going to do, but these two, as you can see, the client price that has accepted the offer, what are these 2 clients going to do? Yes?
They're going to retract their offer.
They're going to retract their offer. Because why?
Why?
What? It's not needed, and, yes? So they can assign it to somebody else who's asking for it over here if necessary. They're going to take those offers back. They're going to put it back in their database, look at the database and say, okay, I've got all these IP addresses out there. Now, if they offer it up and it just sits out there in limbo and somebody else asks for it and they have a shortage of IP addresses, then they can't use that IP address. It's just sitting out there, wasted. Okay? So now, sit down and retract your IP addresses. They're retracted. Boom. Sit. They're not needed anymore. Now, the 4th step of all this. The DHCP server, Taylor, sends a final unicast to the client that includes the IP information the client will use. This IP information will be what? Give me one part of it.
Sorry.
Give me one part of it. If you looked at your IP configuration on your computer, what are the items that you would have to fill in? IP address,
Gateway.
default gateway if it's there,
Subnet mask.
subnet mask,
DNS server.
DNS server. Do you know of any? Yes? Alternate secondary DNS server. He's going to tell him all that. So go over and unicast. Nobody else can hear this. Unicast, tell me the IP address. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, go. It's that quick, right? Okay? That's it. The DORA process is done. So think about the DORA process. The first step is discovery. There's a message called a discovery. In fact, if you do the sniffer, it says DHCP discover. That's the type of message you'll see going across. Then you'll see DHCP offer. Go back. You're sniffing it, even though it's a unicast message. If you're doing a DHCP, or if you're doing a packet sniff, you'll still see the message come across. And then his will be a DHCP request, and then his coming back to him will be a DHCP ACK for acknowledgement. It says, yep, we're done. This deal is finalized. Now, he permanently has that IP address until his lease is up. He's only going to give it to him for a certain period of time. And on his database, yep, this one belongs to him. Got it. I'm not going to pass it out to anybody else. So now, you are permanently, or you are now on the network. What is your question? When there's a VPN, okay. He's got an IP address already, right? Boom. Stand up. Okay, he's got an IP address for this network. But he wants to get to that far network over there on the other side of the WAN, of the router, right? So, he's going to set up an IPsec client. He's going to have a VPN client. Another, like DHCP client, he's got a VPN client. And this VPN client, I need a rat-like creature. I want when somebody can function like a rat. Okay? He's got an IP address, he's functioning on this network. He initiates the VPN client, right? So you are a VPN client, and you say, tell him that you want to connect to another network in addition. Okay, this guy is a VPN client. So you're a little rat-like creature. You tunnel through the network, through all... You're way too good at this. You tunnel through everything else, and you go to a DHCP server right there. Stand up. Brittany is a DHCP server on the other network, and you say, don't whisper, Austin will punch you in the face. You say, hey, I need an IP address for this guy.
An IP address for my guy over
She gives him that IP address. Okay? However, I screwed that up. You don't know that she's there. You ask this entire network. You broadcast to this entire network that you need an IP address, but only this network. Yes?
I need an IP address
Okay.
for this network.
So this, and she says, so this is a discover, right? She gives him a unicast offer. Yep, go. She just gave you a new IP address on a different network. So you tunnel back. No one else can see you doing this, by the way. Hurry up, you're too slow. Okay, and you give him the offer. You pass that offer on. Boom, tell him. Okay, and you do a DHCP request. Well, thank you for that offer. I'll accept that offer. May I have it? Official.
Accept that offer.
May I have it officially? DHCP request. So you tunnel back. And you request it, pass that request on. He took it, yo. Okay. And you send, you're good to go. You give him a DHCP acknowledgement. DHCP acknowledgement is sent back. Man, you're slow. This must be a old network. Go.
This is dial-up.
Dial-up. Go.
It's good.
Acknowledgement. Now, you have how many IP addresses? Huh? Two. You got the IP, get your feet off my first. You have the IP address of this cocky DHCP server over here, which allows you to continue to talk to this network. And you have the IP address of this WAN connection, this VPN. And so now the VPN tunnel stands right here in the middle, and you're like an electrical current. Anything that goes back between him and this other network, you're transmitting. So get over here and transmit. Right? Your electrical current, or you're a light current, or you are an, I don't want to get in the way of this, or you are a infrared current, Okay? All right, so or a wireless current, an RF current, right? You're doing all this stuff. Now, yeah, there you go. That's pretty good, actually. But it's kind of scaring me, so stop. All right, so now, here's the thing. All the messages going from him to her, the important thing about that VPN tunnel is what? With those messages?
Direct.
Huh?
So it's direct between the two.
They are direct between them, not necessarily her, but them and the entire network over there. There's something really important. If I'm a sniffer, and I'm on this network, I can see all the traffic going back and forth between him and them, right? If I'm a sniffer, I'm on this network, what's the difference? Yes? It's secure how? Encryption. I can't grab this packet and read it. These packets, I can see everything. This packet, I can't, because this tunnel is encrypted. And so, she is a public or a private IP address, 10. Even though in between here, I've got a router that's a public IP address at my ISP. I've got a router over here that's a public IP address at the other ISP, wherever he is. These are public IP address, but this tunnel rat has established this session in between this one and this one. So now it's still private IP addresses. Private IP addresses. These are encrypted. These are not. Do I understand? Sit. Okay, so the DORA process takes place anytime there's a DHCP client, whether it's a VPN client or whether it's just a regular network client. In order for DHCP to work, if you are doing DHCP, whether it's a client discovery or whether it's the offer or whether it's the request or the acknowledgement, all of those are transmitted by default through ports 67 and 68. If you have a firewall in place where those ports are blocked, or a router in place where those ports are blocked, DHCP will not work. Now, let's extrapolate a bit. I'll get back to you here in a little bit. You're a network IT professional. Austin is a DHCP client. Who wants to be a DHCP server? You've already done your thing. Zach is a DHCP server. There is a firewall between these two. Austin boots up, sends out a broadcast. The firewall says, stop. You're not getting to my stuff over here. You as a network administrator have to recognize that. You have to see that his broadcasts are not getting through to Zach. But you want him to have an IP address. Now, Zach could be the firewall that's sitting on the server, or Zach could be the firewall that's sitting on his computer and not allowing that. Or Zach could be the firewall in between these two different networks. Okay? So, you have to know that, and one of the benefits of having a packet sniffer is you go out there and see it. You see a bunch of DHCP requests, or DHCP discover messages, but don't see any offers coming back. That's going to tell you that something's blocking those requests or those discover messages. A firewall most likely. So now the next logical thing is where are ports 67 and port 68 being blocked or turned or closed? Now here's the thing, by default, in most computers, DHCP is automatically opened when that takes place. So even if you've got a firewall on your computer, if you are booting up, it'll automatically open up the appropriate ports to allow you to receive those messages. Now first, you had a question.
Like, say, he had a VPN and it connected over there. And what if there's a text on that computer? Would they be able to tell who's getting that IP address?
Good question. After break, we'll come back to that. Would you pause that, please?
So, where is the firewall?
You either